When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed-sponsored jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello everyone, Chris here, and a quick reminder that this episode of How We're the Podcast is sponsored by LiveScore Bet, a principal partner of Sunderland AFC. LiveScore Bet is the home of the total betting experience, combining LiveScore's real-time updates and stats with great odds and offers, all in one slick, easy-to-use betting app. For more information, visit livescorebet.com or download the LiveScore Bet app. And please remember, over 18s only, and please bet responsibly. For more information, go to gambleaware.org. And now, cue the jingle. Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast, sponsored by LiveScore Bet. And you join us the morning after the day before, where we reflect on the heaviest defeat since Sunderland returned to the Premier League, as the lads went down 3-0 at the Etihad against Pep's Manchester City, which was not a good birthday celebration for our manager, Regis Lebris. But let's take the consolation that we were only beaten by one more goal than we were at Burnley, and look what followed that defeat. But there was some hope and a little frustration that came from the defeat that we'll hopefully get into before turning to what has probably been a distraction since the final whistle went at Anfield, which potentially impacted how much focus went on this fixture because, of course, we have the small matter of playing our nearest and dearest next week. But we'll get into all of that and more because I have two gentlemen who will relive it again in detail. And first up, we have the best early riser at How We're the Podcast because he's actually waiting to go to bed, which is, of course, Martin Wanless. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Chris. No, it's a very pleasant time of day for me, this. It's 7 o'clock at night. I've just had me dinner. And so,
well, I imagine it wasn't during the game. Was it worth staying up for?
Well, we'll get into that, won't we?
well, let's just... What time was it when you got up for the game?
Well, it's a 2 a.m. kickoff. So, you know, give yourself 10 or 15 minutes for the alarm to go off and get out of bed and remind yourself what's going on. And then the difficult thing's always getting back to sleep. It's not actually the getting up for the game that's difficult. It's actually getting back to sleep, which is a pain. But
yeah. I'm surprised you weren't drifting off with about 20 minutes to go, to be honest, in this one. But anyway, we'll get into it. And because, of course, we always love to have someone with us on a Sunday who can provide us with expert analysis, and today is no different. Because we have the familiar voice of the brilliant Nick Barnes. Hello, Nick.
Good morning. I thought you were going to say Martin then, but there you go. And talking of 2 a.m. starts, I heard yesterday that Scotland's first game in the World Cup is going to kick off at 2 a.m. against Haiti. So there'll be a lot of overnights for the World Cup. I gather England's game is going to be 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I heard.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can imagine what the pubs in Scotland trying to go get late licenses and everything for the 24-hour licenses for those games. I don't think people just won't go home at last orders. But how was your day at the Etihad in general, Nick? Because actually, you know, I live in Sheffield and I was a little bit puzzled watching the game because it was lashing it down all day in Sheffield, but actually it seemed relatively dry in Manchester for one.
No, it was wet.
All right, okay. What a surprise.
No surprise, Manchester. It was interesting in the sense that because we haven't been to the Etihad since 2017, what we're getting on for 9 years since we were last there, just to see all the development around the stadium. The new Co-op Live building at the back of the North Stand, and then the North Stand itself has been, they've given it an extra layer on top of that end with a hotel. It looks like they're building at the back of the stand. And just generally the development of the Etihad campus, as they call it. It's a remarkable sort of village, sporting village, if you like now. And the stadium itself seems a little bit dwarfed in amongst all the work that's gone on over the last near decade. So that was interesting. As for the day itself, look, it was one of those where it could have swung either way. So I think beforehand, a lot of talk about Sunderland not having won in the top flight there since 1981, which I think, like Liverpool, goes to show just how difficult these fixtures are in the context of the history and the teams that you're playing. So it could have gone Manchester City's way as it did, or it could have been, one of those afternoons where Sunderland, as they did at Chelsea, sprung a surprise. And for half an hour, I thought they defended well. Actually, I thought they were disciplined, well drilled, and I thought, maybe they could see this one out and snatch a goal. But as soon as Diaz scored, you just thought, writing's on the wall here, because Manchester City were just so good. The quality they had on the pitch, they just hit it right on the afternoon. That's the Manchester City that, buoyed by the Arsenal result at Aston Villa, I think, as soon as we saw that come through, you thought, this could be interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, isn't it, that record, Nick? Because actually it goes back to when Manchester City were crap, which I don't quite understand. Because we haven't beat them home or away. We haven't beat them in any competition since 1998. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, at their place.
Yes, it was in Championship, when they won in the Championship. But it's funny you should say that, because I put Rob Mason, the club historian, came on, and I said to him, for all the talk about Liverpool and their record going back to 1983, Liverpool were always top flight. They were, that was because Liverpool through the 80s and 90s, they were, everybody was losing in Anfield. That was a given. But you're right, Manchester City back to 1981. They were particularly special then. So that it's all the more quizzical why Sunderland's record at Main Road and the Etihad is so poor. But just one of those quirks, isn't it? They've had opportunities. I remember. The big standout one for me, I think it was 2012, was when Sunderland were leading 3-1, and that was the season Manchester City won the title, and Sunderland were the only team, I think, that season that they didn't beat at home. In fact, they didn't beat either home or away. And Sunderland were 3-1 up with 10 minutes to go, took Matt Kilgallen off, and they came back to draw 3-3. So that was a near miss, if you like. But other than that, it is strange. It's inexplicable in many ways. But then, the game, the 3-0, that was Manchester City at their best. That's a team 2 points off the top now and pushing for the title again.
Yeah, and actually the Liverpool record not being broken was potentially my fault, because with 10 minutes to go, I turned around to my lad and I says, you might witness something I haven't seen in my lifetime. And then Liverpool went and scored, typically. But just very quickly before we get into it, Nick, because I just wondered if it's always a good one for Gary Bennett to go back to Manchester.
Yes. He did a short video with a former colleague of mine who used to cover Manchester City, and Ian asked Benno, where your allegiance is today, because you're a Manc, and he played for Manchester City. Manchester City was his team. And Benno said, look, I've got two clubs in my heart, Manchester City and Sunderland, but he said unequivocally Sunderland's my team now. He said, I've been living in Sunderland for that many years, played for them for 10 years. I've been covering them for 23 years. He says Sunderland's my team now, but obviously having, played at Manchester City, being from Manchester, in fact, a stone's throw from the Etihad, he's still got a big soft spot for Manchester City. So, he touched on that before the game.
Yeah. Well, look, let's get into the game a little bit, because I just wanted to go straight into the kind of the team and what we went out with, because there was some late news and there was some confusing looks at the team lineup, Nick, when Reinildo was missing, and I had to kind of try and scramble to look at what was going on. I mean, when did you get the news about Reinildo?
Well, firstly, when we saw the team sheet, he wasn't on it at all. And then the club put a tweet out saying that it was a minor groin injury. And afterwards, I asked Regis Lebris if he was okay, will he be available for the derby? And he basically said yes. So it looks as though everything's okay on that front. The team stayed in Manchester after the game at Anfield. So it was a tweak or a slight issue in training. But by all accounts, he should be fine. So fingers crossed, because I thought he was outstanding at Liverpool. And I think the fact that he is 31, going on 32, probably explains, after the effort he put in at Anfield, why he picked up a groin injury. At that age, I'd have picked up a lot more. So, get on him.
I did worse getting out of bed this morning, I have to admit, Nick. But yeah, I mean, Martin, Reinildo being missing late on, Talby and Broby came out, Gacharda came in, Traore came in, Isidore was up top. But actually, I just wonder whether this Reinildo thing, and I might just be looking more into it and thinking Register Briss is a little bit more sneaky than he let on, Martin. Do you think there's a possibility that this Reinildo thing, that it was always the plan to maybe rest him during the week, and this was just a late, maybe getting Manchester City to think he was always going to be in the team, and then just pulling them at the last minute?
No, I don't think so. I think he would have played if he'd been fit. I think he's been such an important player for us. I think he adds a real balance to the defence and a real know-how that I don't think anybody else in the squad can replace at all. And, it's not as if we've got a natural left back waiting in the wings to come in. Trey Hume had to shift over to his wrong side. And, we all also went to 5 at the back, didn't we? So I think there was a whole catalogue of things there we can get into and pull out the nuts and bolts of. But no, I think that's a genuine one. And look, I think if he was going to rest somebody yesterday, it could have and probably should have been Granit Xhaka. Not Reinildo. I think coming off the back of that performance at Anfield, he was 10 out of 10 on Wednesday night against Liverpool. And I think we really missed him against Man City.
Yeah. Well, Martin, just on what the manager's been doing, he seems to have, when we look at the Chelsea game, suddenly going 5 at the back, or in terms of starting a game, went to Liverpool 4-4-2 with Trey Hume right midfield. He always seems to have a little trick up his sleeve. But do you think the late Reinildo injury kind of maybe hampered what he was trying to do, or do you think he was always just going to go with that almost orthodox 5 at the back?
It would be really interesting to see what the team would have been if Reinildo had been available, wouldn't it? Because I kind of suspect he would have gone in with the same structure as he'd gone into the Liverpool game with. I actually thought we would go in with that sort of quite a little bit lopsided formation with Trey Hume kind of playing right midfield, but dropping back to support the defence, and Reinildo pushing up into a 5 and then back to a 4. So I actually thought we would have played that formation. So I actually think Traore came in for Reinildo, and then we switched everything around. But then you've got you've obviously got Hertrauda coming in to the team, and there's part of me, or a big part of me, actually wishes he'd played in midfield, because I know he did towards the end of the game, but I think we're going to need him in midfield over the next month. So I would have been really interested to see him in that position. And in a lot of respects, the team kind of didn't make sense to me yesterday. And I was surprised by how we went about it. After the match, Lebris said that Granit Xhaka and Siddiqui were kind of at 60 or 70% because they're on the yellow card. Well, if that's the case, they're one yellow card away from a ban. If that's the case, don't play them. Put Dan Neil in, put Chris Rigg in, put Hertrauder in midfield because they'll be at 100%. I think we've probably been a little bit too honest for our own good in how we've managed the threat of a yellow card for Xhaka and Siddiqui. I actually think they could have gone full pelt at Anfield, which they did, pick up a little booking for something innocuous in injury time, miss the game against Man City, and then you've got not only guaranteed availability for the Mags game, but you've got Xhaka available for the Brighton game, the Leeds game, the other games that would go over Christmas, because now he's going to the Newcastle game. Yes, he's available, which is fantastic, but he's one yellow card away from missing one of those winnable games. So I actually think we're probably a little bit, we've played this threat with a little bit too much of a straight bat. I think we should have manufactured the situation a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, Nick, obviously we're talking in hindsight and it sounds very easy in hindsight, but I have to admit, I had some of these question marks when I saw the team, before kickoff. But how much do you think that, obviously you've got the Reinildo thing that comes into play that impact on what he wants to do, what he's got in mind. But, you listen to Regis Lebris every week. He's so big on consistency and momentum. And, some of the changes he made, you kind of question, well, where does that go? It kind of went out the window with Robbie, getting us up the pitch at Anfield, winning free kicks, and then he changes them out. It was just a few things. And again, that midfield, if, like, as Martin said, if you think, well, those aren't going to be at 100%, do you bring them out? And, there's these question marks about that starting 11.
It's interesting because I thought Xhaka and Siddiqui played within themselves yesterday. I did speak to Siddiqui afterwards and asked him about it, and he was a bit indignant that I'd even asked the question, to be honest. But I did think both of them did not throw themselves 100% into the game, which is understandable because of the yellow card situation. And Regis Lebris did say after the Liverpool game that he had spoken to Xhaka and felt that he was going to start him at Manchester City. So they'd had that conversation about, where are you in terms of giving 100% and are you going to be okay, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Xhaka's not going to say, I don't want to play. He wants to play every game and he's his captain. And I think I would have been surprised if he had dropped either of them, because the next game is if you take the Newcastle game, if you take the derby element out of it, it's a league game. It's a Premier League game. The next game is always the most important game. Manchester City was the next game. If you want to try and get something against Manchester City, you've got to try and field your strongest team. Broby, he had said they are, to a certain extent, wrapping him in cotton wool because he's not 100% fit. He knew he would get an hour out of him at Anfield, but probably wasn't going to get another hour out of him at Manchester City and bring him on for half an hour, as he's had a want to do over the last sort of month, to try and bring him up to speed. So in that sense, the team made sense to me. I mean, I thought, I didn't think Talwi would start. I thought Traore would probably come back in because of his experience. So it was, I mean, as Martin said, it was lopsided in one sense because Hume had to go to the left and Michele played right. And that wasn't ideal, but it's not unheard of because he's done that before because they lost Reinildo to that 3-match suspension. And it, again, as you say, with hindsight, for half an hour they were doing fine. I thought they were doing, they were keeping Manchester City at bay despite Manchester City's possession and swarming all over them like ants. They were keeping them at bay. It was the one mistake was to allow the space for Diaz to have the strike that he did. It raises a few questions about AFCON and who's going to play where and who's going to do what. But at the same time, or just before the game yesterday, the under-21s were playing Manchester City at Appleton, and Dennis Sirkin got another 90 minutes. So the clear plan is Sirkin's going to come in. What they're going to do, Reinildo is going to go to AFCON, and they're going to draft Dennis Serkin in at left back, which is going to be interesting because he's not played at this level. We don't know how he's going to react to playing in the Premier League, and you hope that he steps up in the same way that Hume and Ballard have, and to a certain extent Mundle, who has looked quite at home in the minutes that he's had when he's come on. So, yeah, very interesting. But it's a difficult one yesterday because I do think, I was querying the fact that, well, not querying is the wrong word. The fact that in the last week, Manchester City have conceded 4 goals against Fulham. They conceded 2 goals against Leeds. And I thought, well, that's a chink of light for Sunderland to go to Manchester City and have a go and try and score a couple of goals. And in the end, they come away with no goals and having conceded 3, which is, in the greater scheme of things, to lose 3-0 at Manchester City is, that's no big deal. It's a respectable defeat, if you like. I'm glad they didn't concede a 4th or a 5th, because that would have made it look a lot worse than it was. But when Manchester City are playing at that level and can take off 5 key players late in the game and still look really comfortable, just shows you at what level Manchester City are at. And Pep Guardiola, in his post-match interview, to echo what you said about Regis de Vries talking about consistency, the word that Pep Guardiola used was consistency. He said, if you're going to win the Premier League, you've got to be consistent. And he's right, So it was a free hit yesterday. For me, take it on the chin. They got the 4 points against Bournemouth and Liverpool. And I don't think they looked in any way sort of a poor team yesterday. So I'm not worried in the sense that they'll bounce back against Newcastle.
Nick, with the midfield, so if you disregard the yellow card situation that was hanging over Xhaka and Siddiqui, is there an element here about the squad depth that we need to consider as well? Because, you've got these 2 players who've, Siddiqui's a young lad who's come playing Premier League football for the first time. Xhaka's, 33 years old, and he's been playing week in, week out. Both of them have been away for international duty a lot. Siddiqui's had a bit of an injury that he's been managing and playing with. Both of them have covered extraordinary amounts of grass this season so far. And to ask them to play at full tilt in 2 away games in close succession like that, Liverpool and Man City within, 3 or 4 days of each other, is it actually not necessarily a case of them so much as he doesn't trust Dan Neil to come into the midfield, he doesn't trust Chris Rigg to come into the midfield, he hasn't got the squad depth that we actually need to switch those players in and out? So is it more of a case of that than the yellow card situation yesterday?
I think it's a good point, and I think there is an issue there. I think you're absolutely right about. I was scratching my head yesterday that it was O'Nien came on and not Neil or Rigg, and it certainly does highlight the fact that Regis de Vries doesn't seem to trust Dan Neil or Chris Rigg to come on and play those roles, and that does raise a question mark over AFCON. And I think the January window will be interesting, because I think if they will go back into the market, and I think that's an area in which they do need cover. I like Talby. I like him as an impact substitute, but again yesterday he gave the ball away at one point late on, which Doku could have capitalised on it and scored again. And that would be 3 games in a row. He gave the ball away against Bournemouth, they scored. Gave the ball away against Liverpool, they scored. Gave the ball away against Manchester City yesterday, they nearly scored. I don't think, as much as I like Talby, he's not the answer to be a regular starter, and he's going away anyway. So I think they do lack something in the middle. I agree with you earlier about Hertrauder. I think he's going to be a key player when the players go away for AFCON. He's going to be, I suspect, the Siddiqui, the defensive holding midfielder. But then who do you play alongside him? Who is going to replace Xhaka? And for me, that is the biggest worry. I suspect. I'm just guessing, but I think Lefay is going to be a key player when AFCON's on, because what they'll try and do, if you're looking at the way the team's going to line up, Sirkin comes in for Reinildo. Mundell comes in as the left winger. Lefay goes into the middle. Trauder plays as the Siddiqui role. And then you've got a question mark about who plays on the right. So again, is Mienda going to come in? But he's not getting many minutes at the minute. So there are question marks, and I think there is a hole there. And I guess I wonder, part of the thinking is they've got, the points in the bank now. They can ride out Christmas, New Year, hopefully pick up a few points. And then you'll start to get the drip of players back from AFCON and get the squad back to where it's at its strongest. But and January offers them an opportunity to maybe bring in one or two players to fill in those gaps, if you like. So it is an issue. I don't think it's a major issue because the position they are in the table, the points that they've got, does give them a little bit of leeway. But nonetheless, it's. I heard someone say, we were listening to the Leeds game driving back, and the commentator said about the Leeds trying to stay up. It's not going to get easier from here in. If anything, life gets harder the longer you get into the season. And I think that's true. I think, Sunderland are going to find it's going to get much, much harder for them over the coming weeks because teams are starting to second guess how they play, how they set up, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. And you made the point about the age of Reinildo and Xhaka, and these things do catch up with players. And so it's going to be a slog. But I hope, with the points that they've got and the fact that Burnley and Wolves now is starting to look a little bit cast adrift, if someone else can be sucked into that bottom three, then again, that might just give them a little bit more breathing space.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting as well to see, I imagine people are monitoring the situation with Masuaku as well going into the January window. But I think that's a good place to take a break before we get into the ins and outs of the game. So we'll be back after these few ads.
Over the last 20 years, L'Oréal Paris has honoured 200 women of worth, uplifting their communities. Women who see the worth in every person, overlooked or underserved, who see an opportunity for change, who see a chance for better. They may be one of 200, but their journeys are always uniquely one of one. Here's to 200 more women of worth.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
While the Whos of Whoville were laughing and eating, the Grinch from his lair sought to wreak havoc on their season. He thought, how do I ruin their holiday meals? A plan sprang to mind, which he enacted with zeal. Dill pickle seasoning on fries will make for a green surprise. And I know they'll be shocked with these loathsome odd socks. So if you want to experience the Grinch's mischievous meal, head to McDonald's and show him how you really feel. The new Grinch meal, now at McDonald's. At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. The Who's down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
And welcome back to How We're the podcast, sponsored by LiveScore Bet. And we're about to get into the ins and outs of the game. And we'll get into the start of the game because we've kind of touched on it a couple of times because, first 15 minutes, we're sitting on the edge of our box. We're under pressure, Martin. And then after about 15 minutes, we get a half chance. We actually break out for the first time. And Lefay potentially has the best chance of the game up to that point where he has that shot that goes into the side net and at the near post. But then immediately after that, and we saw this at Anfield, and Arne Slot talked about this after the game, actually. And I think this is a big part of our game that teams are struggling to get the grips with. Suddenly, after just sitting back and sitting off Manchester City, we went bang. And from that goal kick, we pushed right up into their faces, right up into their half. And it really shocked it. And I think it rocked Manchester City for a minute or two because they they'd just been so used to us sitting off them, letting them have the ball, almost no pressure at all until they got near our box. And this has been a part of our game, especially the last two games, but we saw it in fits and starts in games up to now. And I think this is something that's really troubled Premier League teams, and they haven't got used to it yet, how we can switch it on. We haven't got a press, like Liverpool did under Klopp, where it's completely in their faces in the opposition's half, or they don't set off team completely. We've got this hybrid, and you saw it in action then, and I think it rocked Man City for a minute or two.
I think it took them by surprise, didn't it? And I think it's an interesting way that we do play, where we pick and choose our moments to press. As you say, it's not a consistent all-action sort of approach to that, is it? But we kind of select the right time to go and do it. And it's a funny thing, isn't it, when you come off the back of a 3-0 defeat and you look at the game from the end of the match and go, well, this didn't go right, because naturally you do that because you've suffered defeat, and it's our heaviest defeat of the season, isn't it? It's a long time since we conceded 3 goals. I think that was away at Coventry, wasn't it, in March or April when we conceded 3 the last time. So that can kind of cloud how you view how the game went. The opening spell of the game, I remember thinking just before they scored, I'm actually really happy with how we're playing, because we'd set up really well. We were structured. After the Liverpool game, Andrew and I did a reaction pod. And I said I actually really enjoy watching us defend, because you can see it's really smart, and you can see how intelligent we are in terms of closing space down, forcing the opposition into different positions. And look, Man City this season, I think, have a higher quality than Liverpool that we faced at Anfield. And whether that's temporary or permanent, you can debate till the cows come home. But at present, Man City are a better, more effective side than Liverpool are. So they weren't necessarily forcing or trying to force the game as Liverpool did and then lose possession to allow us to counter. They kept the ball a little bit better, but we still maintained our shape and defended really well. We've obviously still got that ability to then go and spring a counter-attack or build up a nice move. And, I thought that our passing around the defence and our passing out of defence was really good. We didn't panic. We kept the ball. We were composed. We worked it out well. And I thought we actually managed that first half of the game exceptionally well. You had the Lafay shot. As I say, we kind of pressed Man City there. And I think that kind of gave them a little bit of a shock, in so much as they thought, we're going to have to do something different here, because there's a chance we're going to get caught. We're going to have to force the game a little bit more. But, you go into that opening spell, I thought we did really, really well. We really composed, managed the game really well. Man City obviously opened the scoring, and I think that was the first shot from either side on target. So, you've gone in half an hour against a team like Man City, one of the best teams in the world. Let's make no mistake about that. This is one of the best teams in the world that we were facing yesterday. And, they scored from a 25, 30-yarder that was deflected, and we nearly saved it. Roofs nearly got enough on it to tip it over the bar. So it's a funny one, isn't it? Because you find yourself 1-0 down, you think, oh shit, the floodgates are going to open. But we'd actually done that first part of the game really well. Now, 99 times out of 100, that shot doesn't go in. And I think we were probably quite happy to let him shoot from there. We were happy to let him shoot from there, because that was a case of Man City maybe getting a little bit nervy and trying to go, we are going to have to force it. And unfortunately, on this occasion for us, it went in, whereas on Wednesday, we maybe got possession back of the ball a little bit more cheaply than we would have otherwise. But that opening spell of the game, I thought we were really in the game. We went toe to toe, we matched them. And I was really happy after half an hour.
Yep. I mean, Nick, you touched on it a couple of times already, but I'm looking at my notes and I'm seeing, that, after 20 minutes, I'm seeing Sunderland are well organised. We're blocking the passing lanes. I'm looking at City are looking frustrated after around 25 minutes. And then I think it was just after 20 minutes, 22 minutes, something like that, we had that counter-attack where Michele played that ball round the corner to Isidore, and it was Isidore against 2 defenders, and then he won a corner because he got his shot off, and then the corner was cleared. We were looking good on the counter-attack. Traore made a bit of an error on one of them where it was looking good and we were moving forward. There was a lovely move where we played right out from the back on around 25 minutes. Beautiful football. But I'm making all these notes, and all that time in that half an hour there, Manchester City didn't create anything.
No, I agree. I think Martin was absolutely spot on with the analysis of the game, and I didn't feel for half an hour that Sunderland were particularly in danger. Manchester City had a lot of possession. I think the only thing you would say is that perhaps Sunderland gave the ball away, but gave it back too cheaply. They couldn't maintain possession as much as you would have liked. But I think you've got to put the game into context as well in terms of Manchester City at home this season. They played 7 games going into yesterday's game. They lost the first game at home this season to Tottenham 2-0, but they've won the last 6. So, they are strong at home. It is, that they are comfortable playing at home. They're probably comfortable in terms of breaking teams down and sitting on the ball and, in terms of possession. And you can see that the way that they play. For me, they were a lot like Liverpool in the sense that they enjoy all that possession. They play around the box and they try and find a way through. But the difference was that Manchester City looked like a confident team, whereas Liverpool, I thought, had no confidence whatsoever and didn't look at all connected or in any way a Liverpool team. And so clearly they've got problems, and that was illustrated to a degree last night with their result at Leeds. But I thought Manchester City, as individuals, that some of the players, they're just brilliant. And I did think Sunderland looked comfortable. Like you, I had nothing written down until Diaz scored. That just shows you, where Sunderland were for half an hour. They were soaking it up. They were looking to counter when they could, and they did have a few opportunities. I think that the disappointing thing was that they conceded the second so quickly, and that then, it made it that just like Bournemouth. The next goal was always going to be the most important goal. The third goal was going to be the key goal, and unfortunately, Manchester City got that third. But I didn't come away from the game thinking, "Oh my God, the wheels have come off here. This is a disaster going into the derby." I came away thinking, I think I mentioned it, that was a respectable defeat at Manchester City. I went into the game not necessarily thinking they were going to spring a surprise. I went into the game hoping that they weren't disgraced, hoping that they put in a performance, hoping that you came away thinking, look, it's not the end of the world that they lost. And I think that I still feel that. I still feel fairly sanguine about the game and about, going into the derby. I think I'm pleased that Xhaka and Siddiqui, they've got that monkey off their back as far as the derby's concerned. And, now everybody can look forward to that game. But I don't feel that yesterday was in any way a disaster or that there's a big problem. I think I think you have to put it in the context. It's Manchester City who potentially could win the Premier League this season. So that's where we're at. And I think 15 games in to have lost only 4 games this season, it's the mark of a pretty decent team.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, I think the kind of the switch happened because on the television coverage, 29 minutes, the camera panned up into the stand, and it went to on Niall Quinn, and David Bruce was sitting in front of him, and Niall Quinn had this beaming grin on his face. You could see how the game was playing out, Martin. David Bruce sitting in front of him, rubbing his hands together, thinking this is another massive day in Sunderland's Premier League season. We could potentially go and do something at Manchester City. Great first half an hour. And then 2 minutes later, as we said, we went a goal down, Ruben Diaz. But really slow build-up from City as they were doing on the edge of the box. Squared to Diaz. Now, you were saying that we were happy with him taking a shot, and I don't disagree with you, Martin. But he took a touch. His first touch set him up for the shot. And I think everybody knew what he was going to do. And I think Manchester City needed that at that point. They needed a shot. They needed to kind of get the fans off their arses a little bit. And I think it was obvious he was going to shoot. And if you look at Isidore and Enzo Lafay in front of him, it just seemed all a bit half-hearted that they didn't really fancy blocking that shot. And I was so frustrated that if you've got to get out of those, if someone's going to take a shot, you've got to put bodies in front of it. And it just seemed to me that everyone relied on everyone else to get in the way of it.
Yeah, perhaps. I think the shot probably took us by surprise because I don't necessarily think we were expecting that. And I think we were probably encouraging it to some extent. That doesn't obviously mean to say that players don't go in and close the ball down. But as a team, I think we've been exceptionally good at that this season. I think we've been exceptionally good off the ball, closing people down, throwing bodies in the way of the ball, putting bodies on the line, all that sort of stuff. And look, I think, and I love Enzo Lefebvre. I think he's a fantastic player. I think any player who's playing for us right now, on obviously at a certain level, there's probably a little bit to the game where they could improve. And I think sometimes he gets caught a little bit, whether it's a little bit too quick. Probably I think he's got caught in possession a few times in the last few weeks. He's given the ball away cheaply a couple of times in the last few weeks. And maybe that, the element of closing the ball down might be where he's watching what's going on rather than reacting immediately what's going on. But, against Bournemouth, he was man of the match. He's brilliant on the ball usually. I think you get a lot more out of him in the centre of midfield than we do on the wing. And I think he was a little bit isolated yesterday. I thought he struggled to get into the game as much as we like him to. And, again, when Nick's talking about who's going to play in midfield when players go away for AFCON, he's going to be increasingly important in the central area of the pitch because he can get on the ball. He can do that donkey work. And that's when I've kind of I haven't criticised him. I'm kind of criticising him in terms of his stuff there, but he does all of that dirty work really well. He's not afraid of getting tackles and he's not afraid of putting the yards in. So it's not a criticism of that. I think he sometimes just gets that split second where it might even be him thinking, okay, if I get the ball here, where's the pass? It could even be something as simple as that, rather than concentrating on exactly what's going on right now and defensively coming to defensively putting that work in. So, look, I think it's the same as anything, Chris, isn't it? Like every goal that we concede, you can go, well, if he'd done this, we could have stopped it. If he'd been there, we could have stopped it. I genuinely think that we were really happy for him to take a shot because to me, say 99 times out of 100, that gets blocked, it goes wide, it goes over the bar, the keeper saves it. And you kind of go, we're really frustrating City here because you've got a centre half trying to hammer one in from 30 yards. So I actually think, again, we were probably quite happy for him to have that shot because it showed that they were getting a little bit desperate to break us down because that's not a typical Man City tactic. They like to work the ball in the box, they like to play it around, get wide, get crosses in, all that sort of stuff. And we were preventing them from doing it. So I do think it's one of those where you just got to take it on the chin and go, you know what, that was that 1% chance. That flies in the top corner. And again, it flies in the top corner via a deflection from Ballard. And Roofs almost gets enough on the tip over the bar. So I think you just got to shrug your shoulders and take it.
Yeah. Well, I was frantically scribbling away notes to say, well, how does that change things, Nick? And then a few minutes later, that, as you said earlier, that second one goes in, which is the killer. And we've been so good at attacking corners and defending corners. And on this one, when you watch the replay back, it just seemed to me that, I mean, don't get us wrong, it was a great header under pressure in the end. But if you look at, and again, I'm going to mention Enzo Lefebvre again, because just beforehand, the attention was taken away with the Alderete Haaland, let's say skirmish, if you like, when they were basically wrestling each other. The referee pulled it. So the attention was with those two. But Enzo Lefebvre was marking Gvardiol, and I don't think he should have been put in that position to start with. But when you watch the replay back, essentially standing next to him, and Gvardiol just kind of runs past him and just runs away from him. And then you're kind of thinking, well, what is Enzo Lefebvre's job in that situation? Because he's not there to win the header. He's surely there to stick with him and just to put him off and to just harry him to make sure he doesn't get that free header. But in that case, he just went off Enzo Lefebvre, and you wonder, is it the zonal man marking thing? But it all just seemed too easy.
Yeah, I mean, Lefebvre's not the biggest in the world. I mean, he's quite a slight person. And Sunderland suffered to a certain extent when it comes to getting everybody back to defend set pieces. Sadiqi's not the biggest in the world. Lefebvre's not the biggest in the world. They're not a team built of giants. I did think that Gvardiol, he sort of bulldozed his way in for the header. I mean, when you watch it, he just seemed to come out of nowhere, just sort of threw himself threw himself at it, but took everybody by surprise, and he made great contact with it. But I think it's always going to be an issue when you haven't got 6'5" midfielders, and you haven't got that sort of stock in trade sort of defender that you can compensate for those sort of players making those moves. I think you're always going to be a little bit under threat if from teams who've got that quality. But I think we've got to remember that fundamentally Sunderland as a team are flawed in the sense that they've had to go into a market and pay £20 million for players, where teams like Manchester City can pay £60 million for players. And Sunderland are punching way above their sort of financial weight, if you like, at the moment to be where they are in the table, because their recruitment's been so good, because they brought in players that potentially values are going to go up, and potentially they've bought some very, very good Premier League players, but they are a team in transition at the minute. And when they come up against the quality of teams like Manchester City, then they are going to be tested. And I think they were tested yesterday. And as Reinildo said, in the week, every game they learn, and they will have learned from yesterday's game. It'd be a big learning curve. The set piece goals, the Diaz goal. You can't legislate for the brilliance of Shirky and Foden's finish. That's just ridiculous. That is a team that potentially could be Premier League winners. So that is something you just have to sit back and admire that. But you can learn from the Vardiol goal. You can learn from the Diaz goal. And I think when the players were leaving the stadium yesterday, you could see the disappointment etched on their faces. They don't like losing. They're a team that was hurt by the defeat, and they will take that into the next game. And so it reminded me in a lot of ways of the 2014 League Cup final, where we went in more hope than expectation against Manchester City, gave them a real game, took the lead, fantastic, and then Manchester City's brilliance just won them the game. And I think that, to me, was a little bit like yesterday's game. When we went there more in hope than expectation, gave them a game for half an hour, conceded 2 goals, and then it was Manchester City's brilliance, on the day, won them the game. So again, I come back to that. I don't feel disheartened by that defeat. I think it was going to happen at some point. I think Reinildo has said all season, we're going to lose games. We may lose 3 or 4 on the bounce. That is the nature of this division. But I still think there were aspects to the game where you can look at certain players and say, yeah, look, I like what he's doing. Carry on doing that. Trowder's one of them. Mukelia's, there are others. It's still a very good team, and I don't think that in any shape or form we should be sitting here concerned by that defeat. I think that it's just one you've just got to take on the chin.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's a little bit like we've talked about all season, Chris. It's a game of moments, and the performance is actually fine. I think if you look at the performance, take away the result, take away the goals, etc., the performance is actually fine, and I think it's actually very similar to a lot of games that we played this season. It's just on this occasion, the big moments didn't go for us. Right? You've got the Diaz goal, which again, I reckon 99 times out of 100 that doesn't go in. Defend better at the corner, right? You've got, I know we'll go on to the second half, but you've got the 2 chances early in the second half that, Isidore misses, we hit the post. And, if they happen a little bit differently, which again, it's these little moments, we could be sat here very easily with the same performance talking about a great win at Man City.
Yeah. Well, can I just, the last moment of the first half that I wanted to talk about, Martin, which I think could have had a big impact on the game, was it was only a minute after they went 2-0 up, and it was Guardiola's tackle on Michele. Now, this ended up being a yellow card, and it went to VAR, and they dismissed it very, very quickly. Now, you can bring the Luke O'Nien tackle in if you want as a comparison, but I didn't see too much difference between the 2 tackles. I thought Guardiola's tackle was high. I thought it was I thought he wasn't in control like 09. And I was surprised that they at the very least, didn't take longer to have a look at that.
I thought it was certain to get the referee called over to watch it on the screen. I thought it was absolutely nailed on for them to do so. And why they didn't, who knows? We'll probably never get an explanation for it. But, if you look at the boxes that you tick for the VAR to get involved, to go have a look at this, I think it ticks every box. So, who knows? You tell me why they didn't go for it, but I was shocked.
Yeah, Nick, I don't know what you thought about that, but especially because the 09 one went straight to VAR and they just went, yeah, red card. It did seem, you talk about that home and away thing and the size of clubs, Manchester City. I didn't see too much difference between the two tackles.
No, it's an interesting one. And I think Vardiol can consider himself quite lucky that they didn't take further action. I think the Luke 09 one, I think Luke knew straight away, actually. I mean, he was walking before.
Yeah.
He knew.
Yeah,
he knew that tackle was a poor tackle. And when you see it, his studs were up and he caught him on the back of the calf. I think Luke, the fact that the referee had to stop him walking off the pitch to show him the red card, I think, Luke knew. But yeah, the inconsistency, I think you're right. I think that it was a bad tackle on Mkhitaryan, and so Manchester City, that they got the rub of the green in that respect. Would they have been any easier to beat or play against with 10 men? Probably not, because that was just the nature of the game, the way it was going yesterday. But it does raise a few questions about some of the refereeing this season. I mean, the refereeing against Bournemouth, the last 15, 20 minutes in that game was farcical. I mean, that was a circus. So, and I think, the point was made listening to the Leeds-Liverpool game last night. Why have you got two people in the VAR office having to make a decision about a foul or a penalty or whatever, but then they throw it back to the referee on the pitch to make the decision? What's the point of VAR if they can't make the final decision and they throw it back to the referee on the pitch to make the decision? So I think the system's flawed in that sense. But yeah, Vardiol, I think, got away with one. Luke didn't, but I know, it was a poor tackle. I think Luke knows it. We know it. And that's, you just take that one. But the inconsistencies, I think, are frustrating, and it's at this level, with what's at stake. I think it should be better. There should be more consistency.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you both have said that, because I thought I was the only one in the world who was absolutely fuming about that tackle. But before we get into more ways how Sunderland could have possibly gotten something out of the game, we'll take a quick break. So we'll be back after these.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This episode is brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. What do you bring to a holiday party? Simple. A bottle of Casamigos. Because nothing gets the party started like a Casamigos margarita, which isn't just for summer. In fact, it's the perfect pour all year round. Casamigos is the gift that always feels right, because anything goes with my Casamigos. Please drink responsibly. Imported by Casamigos Spirits Company, White Plains, New York. Casamigos Tequila, 40% alcohol by volume.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
And welcome back to How We're the podcast, sponsored by LiveScoreBet. And so that first half, I just thought City created absolutely nothing and ended up 2-0 up. So the question was then whether Regis Labris was going to stick or twist, because obviously Nick's mentioned a couple of previous games from Manchester City against Fulham and Leeds where they came back. And I thought, Nick, after the break, I mean, I just thought, what a brilliant reaction. 2-0 down. You've seen it so many times over the years where teams have just laid down and it's ended up 4 5-0 and they've just sat back and said, well, look, let's not make it a cricket score. Let's just kind of almost give up on the game, but just make it the score look good, presentable at the end. But we came out and had a go.
Yeah, the game seemed to be a little bit more open in the second half, but you're right, they did come out and they had a go. That third goal was always going to be the critical one. They were unlucky. I thought Wilson, he did everything right for the to capitalise on the mistake at the back. It was instinctive. He just whipped the ball, and unfortunately Donnarumma, he blocked it and made a good save. And I think in the week when we talked about that chance he had against Liverpool, it was almost like Wilson had too much time to think about it. This he didn't. He instinctively put his foot through it, and he did the right thing. And it just didn't happen for him. And Xhaka, brought the ball down brilliantly, and it's inches is the margin. He hit the post, and had that gone in 2-1, could have been a completely different game, but it didn't happen. And then I say, we mentioned that Foden goal, the brilliance that led to that. You just cannot legislate for that. Yeah. That is just that. Shirky all afternoon was fantastic.
Brilliant.
The ball he played in was just sublime. And Foden's finish. So 3-0, game over. But it's fine. It's fine margins, isn't it? If one of those chances, Isidor's or Xhaka had gone in, it may have been a little bit more nervy for Manchester City, and it might have been a different game. But it didn't pan out that way, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I said, Martin, I thought we were brilliant coming out after the second half, just even kind of mentally, when some sides look broken when they're 2-0 down at Manchester City and they just go into their shells. We were clearly, given instruction at half-time just to go for it and almost enjoy themselves. And I said within 10 minutes, Nick mentioned, Isidore created the chance, but, we can debate whether that's a miss or a good save. I'll let you talk. But then straight after we got the corner, Xhaka at the back post hit and then he brought it down, shot with his left foot, hit the near post. And again, even these little things we're talking about moments, Martin, that rebound it went into a body of players.
Could have gone anywhere, couldn't it?
And it went to a Manchester City player. So these moments just weren't going for us, were they?
No, they weren't. That was the kind of the story of the day. We've talked about what happened in the first half with the goals and the potential sending off. That rub of the green that you get sometimes or you don't get sometimes certainly didn't go for us. Halftime was interesting because I wondered what Labris would do. And after the Liverpool game, I was really surprised because he said he was disappointed with how I'm paraphrasing, but he said he was disappointed with how we'd played in the first half of Liverpool. We weren't brave enough. We didn't go at them enough. And in the second half, we did, and he was happy with that. And I think I got the sense he kind of reminded them of that at halftime because, again, I was quite content with that performance up until the half-hour mark, and then we conceded the goals, and the game kind of took a different direction from there on in. But we came out at half-time with a kind of renewed belief, I think, in whether whether it was Labris, Xhaka, whoever else had reminded everybody that actually we're a bloody good team. Let's go at them, give it a go. Let's not have any regrets, all that sort of stuff. And I think we did. The Isidore chance is really interesting because he created himself, closed the defender down brilliantly. I think Donnarumma comes out fantastically well and saves us. Saves brilliantly. He closes him down. He reduces the time he's got to react and think to it. I was listening to the reaction pod, and I can't remember if it was Johnny Obama said, I thought Isidore should have gone high and got over the goalkeeper. When I watched, I thought he should have gone low. I thought he should have slipped it under him. So I think that tells you that it was a good save. He got on it. He wellied it. The only criticism I would have with his chance on Wednesday, I thought if he just puts his laces through it, he scores. I think he wellied it. He hit it as well as he could. when you got a goalkeeper of Donnarumma's quality coming out at that pace to close you down, it's, microseconds, isn't it, in it? And I think you put that down to a good save. I think it's just one of them. Xhaka's chance, great opportunity. Again, hit the post, comes back into that danger area in the 6-yard box, bobbles around. And again, a different day. That hits Ballard, hits somebody else, hits the defender, goes in. And all of a sudden, you're back in the game, aren't you? So I just think you look at all of those moments, and then up to that point at least, and you go, you know what? Things didn't go for us. It just didn't bounce for us. It wasn't as if we were outclassed all game. Again, you've got Man City, who are one of the best sides in the world, and we are going toe-to-toe with them. And again, if different things had gone different ways, we could have got a result. I think after the third goal, which was just so ridiculous in how sublime it was, and you just, again, that's one of those you hold your hands up and go, you know what, fair play, because it was just quality. I think Trey Hume got beaten down that side a few times, a little bit easy, and gave them a bit of encouragement. But look, I think that one you just hold your hands up and go, well done.
Yeah, but I'd argue that goal doesn't happen like that at 0-0.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't happen at 2-1, right? It probably doesn't happen at 2-1 because the game's completely different. And again, it doesn't happen if they're down to 10 men. So, look, you've got all of these different things, and that goal is the next chapter of the story that unfolded before us, right? You've created that base. You've got however long left. We've missed or not converted those chances. And they think, right, we've ridden out that storm. We can go on with the flourish and score another goal to seal a win, which they did. But, the quality of that goal, that's it again. It's just ridiculous. It's like, you can't do anything about that. Both the setup and the finish, both of them were quality.
Well, I think this just all shows in my confused state as a Sunderland fan at the moment that I'm slightly frustrated we didn't get anything out of a 3-0 defeat. But Nick, in terms of those substitutions, we mentioned Luke O'Nien being sent off, came on with a couple of minutes to go. Of course, he rotated Siddiqui and Xhaka out with about 20 minutes to go as well. But the Luke O'Nien sending off, I mean, touched on it a little bit, but, the tackle seemed, it was mistimed. I don't know whether you could say it was enthusiasm or whether he's off the pace. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, because Martin did talk about it at the very beginning with players potentially being rotated out during AFCON. Maybe, would I be looking into it too much if I said, Luke O'Nien just looked off the pace? Now, could that be translated to other players who haven't had minutes on the pitch like Luke O'Nien hasn't? And should that be
I was a bit slightly mystified by Luke O'Nien being brought on at Liverpool and then being brought on yesterday, because when he came on at Liverpool, he just threw himself at the players. He just seemed to play with a bit of abandon. I mean, whether Regis Brice wanted that sort of approach from a player just to ruffle feathers, I don't know. But I just thought, when you look at Xhaka and Siddiqui, who've been sitting on 4 yellow cards for the past few weeks and have been disciplined about the way that they play, O'Nien comes on and within 2 minutes he's sent off. For someone who's meant to be one of the leaders in the squad, which is why O'Nien, one of the reasons he's involved is because of his leadership and because of what he brings to the dressing room. I just thought that's not showing leadership qualities, coming on and making a tackle like that in the position that he did, wide on the touchline, halfway. There was no danger really there from a Sunderland perspective in terms of defending their goal. It was rash and it was just daft, and I'm still sort of questioning, why was it O'Nien brought on? Why wasn't Dan Neil brought on? Why wasn't Chris Rigg brought on? I don't know. I'm not sure what the implications are for AFCON or whether Luke O'Nien was ever in Regis Brice's thinking as being maybe an integral replacement for someone. I don't know, because we won't know now because he's going to miss the next 3 games. He's not going to play until January. So all round, it all seemed a bit rash to me, and I still can't really figure it out. It was. In one sense, it was a very Luke O'Nien thing to do, but in another sense, it was. You've at this level, you've just got to show more discipline than you've just got to be. You've got to be at it. from the moment you walk on the pitch in the Premier League. And I just, I'm just left a bit sort of mystified by that yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Martin, we all know what Luke O'Nine's like. He must be absolutely devastated. And he's going to miss out on the derby, and then the 2 games where potentially he might have getting a few more minutes on the.
Well, he will be, won't he? And I feel really sorry for him because he was sold short by Lefebvre's pass. I think it was a bad pass for him, and it wasn't one of those situations where he's running towards a player with the ball and he clatters into them and takes them out. He was trying to get to the pass that Lefebvre had sold him short on. I don't think it was a malicious thing. It was an awful tackle and rightly sent off. But I don't think it was. I think he kind of overstretched with his enthusiasm to get onto the ball. I think, watching him come on yesterday. So I've started playing football again for the first time in 10 years, right? And the way he was moving around reminds me of how I feel running around the football pitch after not playing for 10 years. Because he just looked stiff. He looked leggy. He didn't look flexible, right? And I think that's somebody who hasn't played football probably for 6 months. I know he's had a couple of under 21, under 23s, or whatever they are, but he hasn't played much. So there's a huge, really interesting point in all this, which Nick's touched upon, right? In terms of Luke O'Nien coming into the team and coming off the bench and being utilised off the bench, which kind of goes into the issue I raised before in terms of the depth or lack of that we have in the squad. Because, and look, I'll caveat this with saying people were saying the same thing about Luke O'Nien when we came up from League One to the Championship and said, he'll never be a Championship player. We need to get rid of him. He won't do anything in Championship. And of course, he went on to be a really pivotal and responsible part of that team that eventually got us promoted. So look, I wouldn't. It would be a brave person to write Luke O'Nien off to be able to make the step up. However, I think when you look at the quality of player that we have around the squad, there is a difference with what he brings. And look, he's come on. He came on bloody left wing against Liverpool. He came on left wing back yesterday. That's not his position anyway. So there's a really interesting thing, and obviously that story is not going to develop as fully as it would have because he's going to be sat out for the rest of December. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Regis Lebris sees him in terms of his ability to contribute regularly to the first team, and if he thinks he'll be able to. I'm mystified by Chris Rigg not coming on there, Dan Neil not coming on there. I think there's a really, I'd love to get the real story from Lebris, which nobody will ever get from about that. But I'd love to get into his head and get his true thoughts on that. Even my ender, stick him. I'm not sure if he was on the bench yesterday or not, but we'll stick him on as a left wing back for the last few minutes if you want to make a change. Yeah, he was on the bench. So Talby's kind of played there when he went down to 10 men against Villa. There's plenty of options to stick somebody out there, and it's a funny one, isn't it? Because his appearance against Liverpool had the sense of it being a little bit of a reward for him. And yes, look, that's not to say it's somebody who's not able to play at that level. He very possibly can contribute, but had the feeling that he was being rewarded. Come on the last couple of minutes at Anfield, see the game out. And I think he obviously enjoyed it. It showed on social media and all that stuff afterwards. Yesterday, the game was lost when he came on. So was that a similar thing there? Get a token run out? Maybe, maybe not. Again, it would be interesting to see how these next few games develop in terms of his involvement. Obviously, we're not going to see that now. And it was just bizarre. It made no sense as a sub coming on in that position. The timing of it, unless Trey Hume had an injury, which we don't know about, but I don't think he did. So none of it made sense to me. It was just a bizarre sequence of events, really, at the end of the game.
Yeah. I mean, Nick,
maybe bought Regis Lebris a really good birthday present.
Let's assume it's that. But I saw a couple of interviews after the game, of course, on BBC and on the club's YouTube channel and everything, Nick. But you spoke to people, and I saw Noah Siddiqui. He looked really down about it after the game when he was interviewed about it. The manager was a little bit more subdued than normal. Normally, he's quite kind of not enthusiastic, but when we get beat, he's going, no, there's lots of lessons here we're going to learn. And he wasn't quite as bright as that after this one. What did you feel after talking to a few people after the game?
As I say, I spoke to Siddiqui, and he was, he was indignant, and he was obviously clearly frustrated at losing the game, and he dismissed the yellow card issue, and he sort of out of hand, really. I mean, I don't think there was. I think he was sort of, as I said, slighted at even asked that he may have been playing within himself because of the yellow card. And Régis Lebris, I think by the time I spoke to him, he'd done I don't know how many interviews before. He spoke to me and the other radio guys, and I think by that stage he just fed up with them. And he doesn't, he doesn't like that side of the job at the best of times. So having lost 3-0 and having done a load of interviews and being asked the same questions, and apparently having been wished happy birthday 115 times before he got to me, I can quite understand his frustration. But I just think, by the body language of the players leaving to get on the bus, there was clear frustration. They're clearly hurt by the defeat, which is great. Look, I've got no qualms about that. The fact that they do feel that they were hurt by it is great. It shows they care. It shows they care, and there'll probably be a reaction to that. I'm just left. It just right at the end, it just left me thinking, why? What's behind the 2009 decision? Why aren't Dan Neil, especially Dan Neil, and Chris Rigg not getting those minutes? Why is Mienda not getting more minutes? What's the story behind that? Because if they're not going to get the minutes, why are they on the bench? Then that begs the question of just how deep the squad is, and it's clearly not as deep as Régis Lebris probably wants or likes, and that may well be addressed in January. But it does beg a few questions, and I think those questions, when you get that sort of, if Luke O'Nien hadn't been sent off yesterday, we might not be talking so much about Dan Neil and Chris Rigg and him getting minutes, but because he was, it does highlight, it does put a microscope, if you like, more on the Neil and Rigg decisions and why they're not getting minutes and why they're not playing and why they're on the bench still if they're not going to get involved. It's a strange one. It might unfold during AFCON, and if they're not getting minutes, then there really is, you do start to question why are they in the squad if they're not, if you've got no intention of playing them. It's a strange one for me at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. And just looking at it on paper, Martin, you read it on paper and it's 1 win in 6, but then you break down the performances and then you go, well, first half we were off against Everton, brilliant against Arsenal, off against Fulham, off for a decent chunk of the game against Bournemouth, and then we grew into it and were good eventually. Brilliant against Liverpool and brilliant for, well, let's say the opening half an hour at least against Manchester City. So 1 win in 6 on paper, but the performances have been there generally.
No, they have. And I would disagree with you about Bournemouth. I actually thought we played well, even in that spell where we went 2-0 down. I think we just got caught out by two goals. I think if you looked overall, I thought the performance was good. The one that still sticks out is the Fulham away performance. I thought we were really poor against Fulham. I thought, again, yesterday it could have gone either way, and you're talking about a different game. So, look, I think you're going to get these spells of results, aren't you, and spells of games and fixtures throughout the course of this season. And, we've, at various points of the season, we've kind of broken it down, haven't we? Going, okay, how many points would you be happy with over the next 6 games, 5 games, 4 games, and all that sort of stuff? And I think really, if you kind of go from the Chelsea game to now, and people, if you said how many points would you be happy with in that run of games, we're probably performing ahead of what most people would have been content with out of that run of fixtures, because we've had a tough run of games. So look, I think the test is going to be when we get to the end of the month and see where we are, because if that's 1 win in 10, then it's a different story. If it's 3 wins in 10, then you're probably quite happy with that spell of results, or spell of fixtures rather. So I think it's all part of the lovely story that's been built from August up until now. And I think you've got, I always like to come out and look at the big picture with all of this. And we're going to go through spells where we win more games than we thought we would. We're going to go through spells where we don't pick as many points up as we thought we would have. That's football. And we're just going to have to retain that perspective, and ultimately, keep in mind what the ultimate goal is of the season, which I know people like Gav and other people will disagree with me, but I'm still very much focused on getting enough points to stay up, and then we start a different conversation. Once we hit 40 points, we'll start talking about something else.
Yeah. I mean, Nick, it doesn't sound great on paper when you say one win in 6, but as a fan, you don't realise it until you look, because actually, as I said, the performances have been good.
I keep coming back to look, they're 15 games in, unbeaten at home, and already away from home, they've got a good point and a clean sheet at Crystal Palace. Look where Palace are on the table. They've won at Nottingham Forest. They've won at Chelsea. They've got a good point at Anfield. That the wheels haven't come off. They are, they're where they are on the table for a reason. They're not a bad team. And yeah, I'll come back to it's a flawed team because that's what they are as a newly promoted team. There are areas where we know they can improve, but there are areas where they're also very, very good. I think they are a very disciplined, well-drilled, composed team who are driven, don't know when they're beaten. They are, as I think, was it Siddiqui or someone said yesterday, they're a family. They are a very, very good, tight-knit, close group of players. And that team spirit, I think, is being shown in spades, if you like, in the games that we've seen so far this season. It's worth an extra player in some respects. So, they're moving in the right direction. Going back to Martin's point about, how many points would you have taken before the Chelsea game going up to Christmas? And I think the conversations I had, we were all looking at 4 or 5 points. And then they went and won at Chelsea, and then they drew with Arsenal. So, you can't write this team off, and I don't think anybody has. But I think you can look at that 1 win in 6. You can look at it in so many different ways, and you've got to start thinking, measuring it in terms of, well, in those 6 games, they've been to Anfield, they've been to the Etihad, they've played Arsenal, they've been to Stamford Bridge. You've got to put some context into it, I think.
Yeah, well, I could also say 2 defeats in 8, so you can spin statistics any way you like, Nick. But just quickly, of course, looking forward, Nick. I'm not entirely convinced it's going to be a routine week for you coming up.
No, not really. I mean, I never enjoy the build up to the derby. It's always it becomes a bit all the nonsense that goes with it. It's going to be a good game. I think now it's set up such that the position that Sunderland are in the table, where Newcastle are, and it's going to be a rousing derby, I think, and it's not going to be dull. Put it that way.
Yeah. You don't sound like you're looking forward to it, Nick.
I never do. I never look forward to the derbies. I don't know whether that's nerves. I don't know. I think I'm probably nervous about losing. That's, I don't want them to lose. You sort of, that nervousness creeps in that you want them to put on a show. You want yes, you want them to win, but it's that terrified of losing the derby, and so yeah, it's. I think it'll feel like a long week because there's no game midweek. It's now everything's going to be fully focused on that game, next Sunday. So yeah.
I'm just laughing because I'm exactly the same. I hate the build up. I'm not a fan that the build up, and it just gets me. I'm already nervous. I mean, how do you approach these things, Martin? The derbies, because I'm already feeling it.
If you could give me a button that I press that we fast forward to a week on Monday and we haven't gotten beat, I would press it.
So the build up starts here for you.
It's it's not enjoyable, is it? It's enjoyable when the final whistle goes if we've won, and then for the foreseeable future after that. It is in no way, shape, or form enjoyable in the build-up to it or during the game, unless, as we have been on occasion, being 2 or 3-0 up, and then you can start enjoying it a bit. But man, it's pretty awful, isn't it?
It is. I'm already feeling it. I'm genuinely tensing up just feeling about talking about it this week. But anyway, that's all to come, because as always on a Sunday we start off in the moonlight in the middle of the night, and now the sun has risen, so it's a good place to finish on. And because of that, Nick, of course, we really appreciate your time and getting up for us to talk through it all again.
Pleasure, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Nick. And thanks again, Martin. We're going to have loads this week. I think we're going to be spinning trying to build up for this one.
Yeah, there's plenty to talk about this week, isn't there? So, look, we have to enjoy it. And if you, regardless of how you feel about derbies, whether you love them, you hate them, or you're somewhere in the middle, how often would we have looked forward to this week over the past 5, 6, 7 years, right? This is what we've been wanting the club to be in a position where we can go toe-to-toe with Newcastle on a really level playing field. There's a point between the two teams after the games yesterday, and it's all set up to be a great game. Sell-out crowd, brilliant atmosphere. We've got a fantastically good squad of players. This is what we've wanted, isn't it? So you've got to embrace it. We've got to enjoy it. Even though it might go against our natural instincts, we've got to try to enjoy it and look forward to it. So there'll be plenty of stuff on How We're the Podcast this week to tick everybody's box. Whether you're looking forward to it or you're dreading it, we'll cover all bases, I think, won't we?
Yeah, brilliant. And what a place to finish. Thanks again for everyone for listening. Don't forget, we'll have a more in-depth look at the game, of course, on the Book Report website. We'll have everything else as well this week. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day. Yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.